right, our next presenter and the final presenter before the intermission with a presentation titled Chalking Days is Amity Femia.
Ooh, yeah. Hi. That's good. Yeah. All right. All right, vamos lá. Chalking Days is about spending days making chalk art, but also about chalking up days, as in counting them, which is how the work started. When the pandemic hit, my daughter Thea was in 4th grade, and chalking on the sidewalk was one of the things kids could still do together. I'm a graphic designer specializing in educational exhibits. I love street art and murals, public communication on a large scale. The pandemic brought new messages to our feet. Stay 6 feet apart, wash your hands, call grandma. My version turned into a daily sidewalk meditation and time-passing goal. One chalk spiral a day for 100 days, starting the day the schools closed. I was excited to find that Crayola makes a box of 64 colors of chalk, and that I could paint with it using water and a foam brush. I restarted with the last number of spirals every time it rained, and I never made it to 100. This would have been the entirety of my presentation had it not been for a conversation with my friend Laura. At Oakledge with her one day, I started drawing with charcoal left from a fire, and later went back and added color. I told her about some things I was noticing on the ground. She encouraged me to follow them. I often stop to stretch here at Smalley Park after my morning runs, and to wonder at the alignment of stone bench to center circle of basketball court. Taken alone, it was a beautifully meditative composition. I wanted to use it as a base and add to it. I made sketches on paper, and finally one morning I arrived with my chalk and water. 3 hours later, a basketball mandala was born. Being chalk and temporary, I felt fine about not asking anyone's permission to do this, though I did call a few friends to take a look. And I enjoyed watching people interact with it a bit. Here, basketball is the sport of the cosmos, and court visitors who rolled over it with their wheels, there's Thea again, created shooting star paths. For me, it was a breakthrough, a doorway into creating art that was 4 things: outdoor, public, site-specific, and temporary. Working in chalk expands location possibilities, and I continued with the idea of adding to the everyday environment, integrating my work into things that are right in front of us, but that we might not normally notice. I didn't want to decorate these things, but wanted to follow their lines to grow them into something new that people could discover and wonder about, even if it was temporary. I just read an article in 7 Days about a chalk artist. The author described working in chalk as gutsy and zen. And it's true, you can't get attached to the result. But this one I was so ready to make on the corner of Catherine and Caroline Streets. I had my window of time to work, but the rain barely let me finish. Thankfully, I can record it with photos. Not the same as happening upon it in person like you would with this one at Red Rocks, overlooking Juniper Island. But still, it gets a sort of continued life this way. The photos can also make you wonder what it is you're looking at. When the chalk is on the rock ledges, the photos can really confuse scale wonderfully. This one looks huge, but it's not really. In addition to chalk, light is also temporary. So is season and weather. I was interested in using the temporary medium of chalk to capture the even more temporary nature of shadows. On the left, I traced shadows of trees during the day and realized it was really hard to keep up with the sun. I had slightly better luck with the shadows cast by steady streetlights, though it was cold work and dark. In the light of the next day, I wasn't quite sure what I had made. Also in winter, I added to the patterns that form from sidewalk salt that melts and refreezes. I call them salt flowers. My challenge was to add to their delicate lines without making them disappear. These were really fun for getting double takes, what was there and what was added. And of course, the melting of the final snows and the coming of the light inspired some spring pieces. The left one lets you imagine the flow of water downhill from the snowbank. maybe bringing some plant life with it. On the right, the melt is more of a splat. I made some quicker studies at smaller scale, leaving for my morning run to the lake with my phone in just 2 colors, black and white, in my pocket, finding small shapes, angles, and directions in the rocks, and adding as little as possible, just what was needed to bring them out. I got mostly positive comments when I shared these photos and when people would pass me while I was working, though they were mixed with some concerns about the chalk dust getting into the lake. And some people just thought a natural landscape should be left well enough alone, regardless of whether the marks were temporary. But one morning, I returned to find a real permanent piece of what I would call graffiti, in a negative sense, on the rock near where I had made some drawings the previous day. A tag, someone's name, but it was just a little too similar to what I was doing. It really stopped me in my tracks and made me wonder, was I encouraging graffiti? Was I engaging in it myself? I thought about finding more remote places, maybe only accessible by kayak. You can see a little charcoal drawing I did here at the bottom if you look closely. But the scale was dizzying, and the surfaces I could reach were pretty rough and slimy. Still, I continue to be inspired by the big rocks. I love imagining what I could do working with their patterns, and maybe a long pole or a floating ladder. Or maybe I could make full-size images of them as part of an indoor exhibit on local geology. Again, a question of scale and time. Until then, I go back to my sidewalk, where I can experiment and make pieces with more detail and complexity, close to home, over a period of days, as long as the rain holds off. Someday, I'd like to do a mural with paint.